our industry relies on a clean environment. I think one of the biggest things I've seen personally in the last year is how important it is to be genuine in your green approach. So just calling something green or painting it green is not going to work. You have to be genuine. Often that means taking a second look at things. I think at Icomia we've been quite cautious about jumping into certain things like life cycle assessments, etc. And we'll get onto that maybe in a little bit more detail later. But it's important to fundamentally believe in what you're doing. It's no longer just a label. It's a way you manufacture. It's how you go about manufacturing. It's how you go about educating your own owners, etc., on the usage of the final product. But enough about me, enough about Icomia. I think if we can just go around the rest of the panel, we can all introduce ourselves. Come back.
So I'm Andrea Frabetti, CEO of Sunseeker International in the UK.
My name is Igor Kluun. I'm the founder of Van Yachts, and we make luxury sailing catamarans from recycled materials.
And Ken Whittemore from Triskel Marine. We specialize in generating electricity very cheaply.
I'm Florestan Fillon. I'm coordinator for the Sustainable Yachting Network, which is a network that informs and brings together yachting actors on the subject around sustainability, obviously.
I'm James Starkey. I work in sustainability. I work with a composite manufacturer in the UK called Norco, with other companies alongside, and we manufacture structures for the marine industry as well as other industries.
I'm Barbara Merio, owner of Amer Yacht. We produce a super yacht with a special focus on a green subject.
Okay, Barbara, maybe just keep the mic and maybe expand just a little bit on what Amer Yachts has done in the last sort of 2 years towards a sustainable approach.
My father, the founder, has spent all his life trying to reducing consumption and emission. And with IPS system last year, we have found the right solution. We have created a 94 boat that has become a sort of laboratory to use material recycle and recyclable, introducing a 3D printed helm station is the first component in a super yacht created without a mold. And we have created a boat with the weight reduced of 20 tons. This has permitted to obtain at 9 knots 3 liters per mile. That is an exceptional result. This was last year. This boat has been sold, now is in charter, and a lot of people can understand the big effort that we have done. This year we have started a new challenge. About emission, we think to have do the best with in the size of our boat. We would like to do more, work on a different material. So we have found, thanks to a startup company, Italian startup company, they have proposed us to use Filava, that is a new fiber that is totally recyclable. So we have started the analysis of this material and starting to produce an helm station that will be installed in the next Amercento. But the scope is create a boat, entirely boat made of this material, also the mold. So we will have at the end a boat totally recyclable. We work not only on the product now, but for future generation, help them to recycle the material, the product that we made. So this is our work. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. maybe James can also just give a bit what you've been up to. I know you were part of the panel last year. In the last sort of year, what has progressed in terms of the big sustainability side of your work?
This time last year I was a student, and now I'm fully employed, so there's a personal achievement there. I'm able to practice what I studied for 4 years in naval architecture and in engineering. My interest was in sustainability in composite structures specifically. And in the last 12 months, what I've been doing is looking at the carbon footprint of boats manufactured. So in my current role as a project engineer, I come across boats in a variety of shapes and sizes that we build. And in my personal interest, I've been assessing their carbon footprint and interrogating that data. I'm very fortunate that I've got access to the raw data, the actual ingredients that go into each of the boat builds, not only boats but other structures as well. And so I feel that I've got a very in-depth knowledge of just what goes into these build processes, and most interestingly, putting into place, calculating or measuring rather, the waste for consumables, the waste for the materials, and actually being able to calculate the true weight of packaging. And that gives gives me a great deal of confidence rather, that when I publish a set of figures, or when I say to somebody that the carbon footprint or the CO2 emissions of a particular boat or structure is X, there's a lot of information to back that up, and a lot of assurance. So life cycle analysis, I'm really into looking at sustainable materials, and the most obvious thing that moves on to is actually if you're able to calculate that, the next thing was, well, what could you do to do that better? It's not just a question of reducing waste, it could be looking at alternative materials, and then you could put that back into your calculator, and you can actually say quite accurately, actually, you know what, if you built this boat out of material A versus material B, and in one exercise on a relatively small boat, it happened to be that there was a large number of those boats being built, it came out with a figure of 49,000 tons of carbon emissions saving with just one client, with one boat, within a range. And that's a big number for the marine industry, because typically we deal with small numbers of volume production. But yeah, there's some really good data out there now, which is 12 months on from where we were last year.
Right, right. And Florian, yeah? Maybe you could just give us an outline of what your foundation is busy with in the...
Yeah. So I work for the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, and we've worked with the yachting industry for 14 years, believe it or not, on sustainability at a time where the context was quite different, let's say. And we started the Sustainable Yachting Network just recently, about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, just because we see that the industry is, I think, really changing, obviously opening ears and eyes on what should be done and can be done. So we have more than 160 members now, so yachting actors all across, a lot of shipyards, designers obviously, but equipment providers, federations such as I-nnovation, right. And just trying to really, we're doing this. It's not a sexy thing when you're an environmental organization to work on yachting, trust me. So we're really doing this purely for helping out and we hope we do, helping out the industry in this transition, and really trying to inform and trying to link people to proc new collaborations, new development and sustainability. If I may, so I have a good idea of what others do and what some of our members do. I think quite a bit has changed, I think, in terms of industry-wide initiatives to support sustainable development. So I guess there's us, the Sustainable Yachting Network, but you have the Water Revolution Foundation that was started also about a year ago. And they're actually, while we speak right now, at the Super Yacht Forum, they're launching a tool called Yachting 4.0. and you should really get in touch with them because the idea is to create a tool to show impact, environmental impact of yacht building, so I think really the calculations that you have with the calculations that they have, I think in general we need more collaboration for the industry to really up its game with regards to other industries, up its game on that field. And I think this is, if I may, I think it's the by default that really has changed in the last year. I think we see it in design. The beam to length ratio is now a by default idea that you need this beam to length ratio for efficiency. Multi-hull, which is something that especially in the super yacht world, it looked like something that they could never go to. But now understanding the efficiency of multi-hull, and I think in terms of propulsion, you see a lot of new builds that are coming, hybrids that are coming, electric. There's a lot of development needed. I think a lot of small and medium actors need to be supported for that development to happen. And there's hydrogen, which is real now. It's you could say right around the corner or there. For a lot of people, it's already there for people who know about it. And I think it's very important to take a look at that for different ecosystem. I think for smaller vessels, it's going to take more time. But obviously for vessels that are quite energy consuming, I think hydrogen is a solution for today and very certainly for tomorrow. Okay, I could speak for hours, so I'm just going to leave it.
That probably opens up nicely for Ken Whitsamore, basically, because that's pretty much the hybrid discussion and how to save energy.
We could have scripted this, couldn't we? It was a fantastic introduction. Our interest as a company is in the consumption of energy, or rather the minimization of the consumption. And you've asked about trends in the last 12 months. What we have seen as a really notable trend is the move to multi-hull manufacture. Fits very well with what you just said. And what multi-hulls do is give you a fantastic living platform. So in terms of dollars per square meter, you get an awful lot of space for a relatively small amount of money. The reason that's important to our industry is that it attracts more people onto the water, because I've been sailing for a long time and I'm used to eking out your navigation lights at night because your car battery won't last all night and having to turn them on, that kind of thing. Very, very few people will do that now. And if we want to get more people into the industry, boating's got to be more comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
More comfortable means more room, hence multi-hulls. And what do you fit in those multi-hulls? You put more domestic equipment. You make it more like your home. If you're going to make it more like your home, you're going to use a lot more energy in order to sustain that. And so you've got this impossible conundrum where we need to be more sustainable, we need to be greener, we need to consume less, and yet our market is driving us towards consuming more. So how do you do that? Until hydrogen comes, we're still dependent on diesel. So the first thing you can do is make sure you burn that diesel as efficiently as you possibly can. And one of the technologies that we use is to put use a generator as a variable load on your main engine. So we can push the engine up to its optimum operating point. So the engine is propelling the boat, but it's also generating electricity. And if you think about it, that's an opportunistic source of power. Because it's not like a standalone generator which you can turn on and off whenever you want it. This is on when you're propelling the boat, it's off when you're not. So that only becomes sustainable if you can store that energy. And the big change from our perspective is the prevalence and dropping price of energy storage. So mostly lithium-ion batteries, but energy storage generically. And if you can store energy, you can use multiple sources of energy, not just your diesel engine, not just your diesel generator, but when the sun's shining, you can store power from your solar panels. When the wind's blowing, you can store it from your wind turbine or whatever. Tuck it away somewhere and then use it when you need it, running the aircon overnight. And that gives you the opportunity to have more power on board without actually costing the Earth to get it there. Because there's loads of energy around, but we're just rubbish at capturing it. If you can capture it and store it, you have a route to much more sustainable boating, which is providing you with power without compromising on the pleasure, is the name of the game. And one last point I want to make on that, I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer, I love the numbers and the underlying data and all the rest of it. And we have some clients who are absolutely adamant they will not compromise on the fun, which is what ultimately what boating is about. It's a you don't have to spend money on your boat, so we've got to make it fun and enjoyable. So they want that enjoyment without compromise, but they also want to know how efficient, how much energy they're using. And we put in place a metric for these clients. Scientists like numbers. And you can convert everything back to diesel fuel, basically. We know that if you burn diesel really efficiently, you're going to burn around smaller boats 300 grams to generate a kilowatt hour of energy. And now, because we're using energy from multiple sources, if you measure the complete energy consumption of that vessel, whether it's for cooking, for air conditioning, for hair dryers, for whatever it is, propulsion, measure the total energy consumption of the boat in kilowatt hours, look at the total diesel consumption of that boat in kilowatt hours, and you can get a measure relative to your fossil fuel consumption, your carbon emissions, of just how good that boat is. So if you're driving your main engine at its optimum, you already get a low figure, put more renewables into that mix, and your figure goes lower and lower and lower. So you've got an absolute metric. You see it on the side of aircraft, A to D on the efficiency of an aircraft. You see it on your houses. When you buy a house, there's an energy efficiency code. This is an opportunity to do exactly the same for a boat. So you have a metric. And when you're out there in the marketplace, wanting the fun, wanting the efficiency, here's a number that you can look at. Say, okay, that boat, in terms of energy consumption, is better than that boat. So I'm going to buy this one.
Thank you. Cool, thanks, Ken. And Igor?
Yeah, so I wasn't here last year because our company hadn't started last year. So I'm I think in a good position to sort of reflect on what I see as a newcomer. I've spent my last 15 years of my life working in sustainable entrepreneurship, building or working for sustainable businesses. And again, being new in this industry, there are certain things that are puzzling to me. When we started building the Vaan multi-hull, which is indeed a wonderful living platform, we found that there wasn't a great sailing platform. I mean, besides the gunboats and everything else, but most of the cruising, wonderful living catamarans aren't great sailors. So we set out to develop a catamaran that is a great sailor. For me, as a green entrepreneur, basically, it's not an option to decide how green do we want to be. Is this just green paint, or is it needs to be totally real. So it needs to be truly sustainable. So we went to all the suppliers that are actually here in this Metz. I spent the last 2 years running around this. And it turns out that most manufacturers, most suppliers do have sustainable options, but most customers and most builders don't ask for them. So for instance, when we went to look at recycled aluminium, our hull is made from post-consumer scrap recycled aluminium. So that means they're old window frames, old license plates, traffic signs that are being recycled to, create a luxury yacht. when we went to the Hydro website, a great company that are partners with us, but we sent an email. They had a specific email saying green@hydro.com, and they didn't respond to us for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. I sent another email, so that, listen, we're interested in buying this recycled material. And 2 weeks later, we got a message and say, I'm sorry, we didn't respond, but nobody ever emails us on this green email address. So that doesn't say much about Hydro as far as I'm concerned. It says a lot about this industry that they're not asking the questions. Even if I talk to other superyacht builders, for instance, and I'm telling them about this recycled aluminum, why you're not using this, there's sort of a gaze. They're like, I don't know. It's just not what we order. And the same goes for wood paneling. It goes for fabrics. All the renewable options are out there. They're not more expensive. They're not worse in quality. But the industry, I think, and I can compare it a little bit with my last 15 years working in the finance industry and the energy industry. This industry is in the same phase of sort of, oh my God, there's something sustainability, and we need to start thinking about this. And I think it's much more urgent than starting to think about it. We are here in an ecosystem. The people are listening here are already interested in sustainability. So we're kind of preaching to the choir here, and we're all agreeing with each other. But the problem, of course, is the people that are not listening yet. And I think that is, if you look at the other industries, once that change comes, it's going much faster than, for instance, renewable energy, or if you look at Shell and BP, the public scrutiny that starts once people are aware that this may be a polluting industry or maybe a selfish industry. Once that public scrutiny starts working, there's no pushing it back, and rightfully so, to be honest, rightfully so. So I think everybody needs to feel more urgency because this is coming way faster than you may want it to come, because you may not be ready for it. But I think new products all have to be as sustainable as you can. Not let's do a little bit of sustainability, make them as sustainable. We can't do everything when it comes to sales, for instance, for our catamaran. We have no solution yet. There are a lot of issues that are hard to tackle, but for instance, with the recycled aluminium, we went from, it's an energy reduction of 95% using the recycled versus the virgin material. So it's all good. It's all benefit. It's all, more profit ultimately. But the shifting gear needs to happen much faster than I think it's going right now.
Okay. That's some great feedback. Andrea?
So, the panel just talked to you about many aspects. All are important. Barbara mentioned the materials in which the boat are built at, and the lightweight is very important. As a Sunseeker International, of course, we build a motor yacht and super yacht, and we take care about all those aspects. Like, for example, Ken mentioned about the hull and the efficiency. For example, our 50 meters, the 161 made it together with Icon Yachts. It's an hull design really focused to save fuel. But this is not what I would like to talk today. I would like to talk about propulsion. I think that there is a big confusion. I mean, a lot of misunderstanding about hybrid. Not necessarily hybrid means to save fuel, to improve the environmental. There is a lot of misunderstanding about. I started 14 years ago making the real first serial production of motor yacht, sold also in United States and everywhere in the world. And then Sunseeker started in 2010 with the first hybrid. And today, as a Sunseeker, we are doing a 133. And so on those 14 years, I have the chance to see the final customer. For example, in United States, nobody, as a customer of super yacht and yacht, is really interested about environmental friendly. Nobody asks for sustainability. And so I deeply believe that if we want, in reality, go forward to promote sustainability, we need to think something that attract the customer,
Absolutely.
who really used and pay for the yacht. And to do that, I think that is the comfort that you can get and some advantages that I have sea trialed the boat many times with final customer, and they love the possibility to stay at anchor without any genset on, not having the water dirty around when they take swim, and having a night without noise of the generator on. And so the technology that really attracts the customer today is the full parallel hybrid technology, because the serial hybrid to me is something that in reality costs more in terms of fuel, 8-9%, no way to save fuel. I made personally together with MTU that we are developing the new Super Yacht Sunseeker full parallel hybrid measurement at the same speed, the same day, same sea state condition. In reality, you can save 25% of the fuel, liter per mile, if you're going 10 to 12 knots.
Right.
And that is a reality that you can get with the new technology and the parallel hybrid. What I want to say, but at the end of the day, the final customer is not interested about the fuel consumption reduction, is not really keen about other way to sustainability, but he likes to be on board without any noise and not smelling any smoke. And this is the reason why, honestly, I do not understand why IMO oblige us to install a SCR that gave no any benefit direct to the final customer, only extra cost, extra weight, and probably extra trouble when that SCR system has to be, recycled. I think that in the opposite case, when all the boat will be hybrid and some local authority will oblige the boat to go out from the harbor only in full electrical way, we will save a lot of pollution. That pollution is not only smoke, NOx or CO2, but it's only noise and bad smell. And so we are really focused on that, in that development, and very soon our first series of hybrid yacht will come on the market available.
Right. Well, hopefully I get to come on a sea trial actually on the new hybrid. And Andrea raises an interesting point there. I've just come from a NOx Tier 3 meeting. So this is an IMO regulation that's impacting quite a few super yachts. And it raises a very interesting point about the impetus needed. So what are we going to do in the next year without a bit of a push? And I guess what kind of push is needed? Do we need a regulatory push? Do we need a market push? Should clients really be approaching big yachts saying, and I really want this, I want clean energy on board, I want all the way down to wastewater treatment on board? Where's that going to come from? The market, regulators, from ourselves as industry. So it does raise an interesting point. I'm very familiar with IMO method of introducing regulations that capture everybody to do with shipping, and somehow we've been included in this. And that actually fighting it really does label our industry quite badly. So it's quite difficult once there is a regulation in place to then say, you know what, we don't really like that part of it, we don't want to listen to that part, it doesn't suit our industry. So it's a bit of a careful what you wish for approach. And also in terms of how to measure, I think James raised this with an LCA, so a life cycle assessment. So how do you compare product A with product P? Now we know because we may be familiar with materials, we may be familiar with the ins and outs of the manufacturing process, but how does the client at a boat show in relatively short amounts of time make that comparison? which leads you to, if we all developed our own life cycle assessments, we'd run into trouble. We'd have blue star ratings, green star ratings, gold star ratings, and there'd be more confusion, not less. So it's quite a challenge. ICOMIA has looked at a sort of life cycle assessment. We would prefer to see an international standard begin to develop it. Standards are voluntary, so it doesn't have to be regulatory. But the nice thing about that is that harmonized approach. So boatyards throughout the world could use, and there is LCA stuff available at ISO level, so at international standard level. But perhaps we want to talk a little bit more about the coming year. I know Andreas mentioned it. You know, what other avenues? I'd actually like to see Ivo, he's asked for a hard question. Somebody to disagree with him. But are there actually any, at this stage, are there any questions from the floor? Because this is the importance of a panel discussion. There is also this link with Slido. If you don't want to embarrass yourself with the question or asking it, you can go on your phone and none from Slido.
Yeah, I'll pick them up on
Okay, okay. Are there any questions from the floor? Let me, who's got the mic? We've got one. Cool.
Hi, hello. I am Marcela with Icon Yachts. And I think it's great that we talk about sustainability on building yachts, but I have a question about the life cycle of the yacht. I mean, we're all focused in building more yachts, selling more yachts, and perhaps I just don't know, and there is something out there, but I always wonder, we are putting all of these floating, polluting things in the ocean, which is great for our business, of course. But what happens at the end of the life cycle? What happens at 10, 20, 30 years after a boat has been sold and is being floating? I mean, you hear all these cases of these insurance claims and the boats just ending at the bottom of the ocean, to be honest. It's very sad. And there is, I don't know, maybe there is a regulation or a system of, you know, taking back the boats, but not that I know of, or that are not, I mean, I haven't heard about anything like this, and then there is not much that you can do with fiberglass. I mean, steel and aluminum we can all recycle, but I just don't know what happens with fiberglass, and I don't know what happens at the end of the life cycle of a yacht.
Thank you. Yeah, a very good question. One thing just to add, that we are talking about end of use and recycling tomorrow on the stage. There is a lot going on. I can assure you of that. I know it's the comparison. Recycling's been compared to, you have an accident in the bathroom, you're busy mopping the floor, and we're mopping the floor by recycling, and we're not turning off the tap. I totally understand that analysis, but at the moment we've got two things, I think, going on, and we do tend to use the term reuse instead of recycling. So priority one is not to let it end its life, to keep it going. But that isn't always the case, and we're reaching a stage, you're 100% right, we have an old fleet that does need to be removed, so to speak, from the environment professionally. And there are, I think previous sessions here on the stage have addressed this in terms of material reuses and everything else. Does anyone, yeah?
I would just like to add to that, yes, we're talking about building new boats, but the whole idea of the circular economy is that you think about end of life while you're designing the boat. So they are completely connected. You cannot think of what material are we going to use if you don't think about the end of life. And the benefit, I think, is that we find that most of the materials that we come across that are fully recyclable, so really fit into the circular model, they keep their value better. When a Van R4 reaches end of life, we can use that as new virgin material again. So we might actually add, give you a refund for your boat because of the value it contains. So those two things are really connected, and they should be, and I think there's even an economical benefit to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Thank you. I was talking earlier about the ability to store energy, allowing us to use less fuel and be more economic. There is a downside of that, and that relates directly to your question. The new storage techniques, lithium-ion storage techniques, are very good, very efficient. The batteries have a very long life. They charge and recharge very efficiently, so there's very little energy loss. But an open question is what you do with them at the end of that life. And to my knowledge, there is no answer to that yet. And if you look at traditional energy storage techniques like lead-acid batteries, which everybody knows, lead is a base metal, you melt it down, you use it again. Lithium, you can't do that. There's actually very little value. Lithium's a very common material, but it has very little value. And there is, at the moment, unless anybody else knows, I'm not aware of any way you can recycle these things. So in order to get energy efficiency, energy harvesting, good use of the resources around you today, we are running up a potential problem for tomorrow. And I don't have an answer to that.
Right.
It's a good question, and the two materials you raised, steel and aluminium, have a commercial value. So there's, in our mind, we can connect the importance of trying to recycle those materials because there's a commercial incentive to do so. If we put on our environmental hat and we worry about the pollutants, if we talk about other materials, as an example, a composite material, then the holy grail within the industry currently is for anybody manufacturing in composite to be able to close that loop on sustainability by being able to recycle those fibers or the resins or both. So there is a lot of talk about being able to do that. I happened to have manufactured a composite material which next week is being recycled, and the fibers will be put back through the melting process. And this is being filmed so that you will actually see the same fibers being put through the furnace and being spun, and the same component being made from those very same fibers. That is an exercise to prove that that is physically possible. I work within the composite industry, and in the last 12 months, I've had many people, colleagues and others, tell me that there's no point in doing this, or it's not commercially viable, or perhaps, it's much easier just not to worry about doing this. But the reality of the situation is that when we deplete resources to make something and don't have a way to replace those, we know at the point that we're designing, when we're putting our pencil to paper and offering a solution to a client as something that they can sail or enjoy or cruise around the world in, we know that we're not giving them full value. And all of the answers are not there yet, but all of the evidence, all of the scientific and engineering evidence points towards a solution being available. So I take it as a personal challenge in the coming months, in the coming 12 months, to actually demonstrate that that is physically possible. Not only to make a panel or a sample, but to actually have a vessel that is out there. All it takes is a person from within industry to want to do that. And unfortunately, if you're building a super yacht, telling the client in the next 12 months they can recycle those materials is perhaps not what they want to hear. But if you're making something else, then, building in a 5-year life program and saying you'll buy back that vessel, or at the end of its life and you're selling it to a committee, then they very much want to know what's going to happen at the end of its life. And so I do believe that there is a commercial incentive for this to happen, and together both the industry can develop these. So yeah, watch this space in the coming months, because I do believe that that solution is out there.
Great.
I can add also that is have an important rule. The building for disassembling means we have to change mind when we start to build a boat, because we have to think what will be at the end of life of the boat. So as builder, I found that there are a lot of material that you can choose to help for disassembling. There is always a green option. It's only time and ask supplier to give us this solution.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question here. It's been partly answered already, I think, by James a minute ago. Are there any viable, sustainable alternatives to fiberglass now? And it ties in with the question from the lady over there a little bit earlier, because tomorrow, as Patrick mentioned, we have a special session on end-of-use boats. It's something we've been working on here at Metstrade for 5 years. We've had several conferences and forums before around that subject, and as the lady mentioned, the fiberglass has always been the biggest problem. You can break a boat up quite easily, but what do you do with the composite is always the biggest challenge. Well, what we've done for tomorrow, we've got quite a few speakers, I think 10 altogether, from various parts of the world that have various projects ongoing, and actually you've got some real activity moving forward, which we can see as some achievements in this field. And what we've asked them to do is to talk not only about how we deal with the heritage fleet and the composites that are already building up in the end-of-use boats, but also to give some ideas about what kind of composites can be developed for the future to make sure that we don't end up with this unrecyclable material. So there will be some discussion about that tomorrow from some people that are working on some of those kind of things. So it's 12 o'clock tomorrow. If you'd like to come along, you'll find out more information.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Are there... You in? Yes. Oh.
Sorry, you were just mentioning about the batteries. I recently read an article about some investigation in aluminium batteries, which would therefore be fully recyclable. Being that I live off-grid, I'm quite keen to know. Have you heard any more about that? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, a little bit. We've seen them, played with them a bit. It's not a technology that I have seen in any commercial form. Again, others may have done. I haven't. We sell a lot of batteries, and they never appear on the radar.
Okay. Yeah. Due course. Just yell. I can't. No, it's good.
About the batteries, you're talking about. You talked about the batteries. Why not use hydrogen as an energy carrier? And I know it looks like very funny, and it's not really overdeveloped yet. But as an industry, shouldn't you take the lead in that?
Sorry, it's very difficult to hear you. Was that why aren't we using hydrogen?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Again, interesting. We've been involved in a couple of fuel cell projects which were stopped because they were not commercial. But I think the fundamental issue with hydrogen is not hydrogen itself as a fuel. It's a very good fuel. It's the infrastructure to deliver it widely enough to justify changing the fuel on your boat. So it's. I'm not quite as positive about it as Florestan. I think personally we're a long way from being able to use hydrogen as a viable fuel. Not that it wouldn't be good, but
yeah. So I'll temper a little bit of everything there. I think there's a lot of, hydrogen's been out there since the 50s. And so when you talk about hydrogen today, everybody's like, again. And what is the new discussions going to be about this thing that we're never going to use? The truth is that today the technology has matured quite a lot in the last couple of years, and it just comes on par with various other, energy systems, and the efficiency is better. Now it's in terms of costs and in terms of infrastructure, just like Kevin mentioned. But you see Norway, just take a look at Norway, and you take a look at the shoreline of Norway. Now, the infrastructure is there now for line ships to go from one city to another, and they're going to be a full hydrogen transportation network there. So you're right. It's easy and it is better in many sense. It's still a little bit more costly, but it's going down. I'll mention one actor specifically. It's Energy Observer Developments. So Energy Observer, you might know, it's this vessel that went around the world. It has solar panel, it uses renewable energy and hydrogen. So it's an autonomous vessel that is a bit of a lab vessel. They realized they're kind of expert on the subject of hydrogen, and they put together a company that looks quite interesting and ambitious and has really the staff and capacity to back it up, which is Energy Observer Developments. And so they're helping now hydrogen ecosystems to be created, and they have a generator, hydrogen generator, coming out very soon. And this generator is it's going to be, again, a little bit more expensive than a fuel generator, but it has less volume. It's more efficient. It comes really in a package where just this economy of scale is the only issue. But I would really take a look at them and what they're providing. I think there's a lot. I don't want to be too long again, but there's a lot that has to be said also on ambient hydrogen. So this is new types of hydrogen, again, that are coming up in recent months, if not a couple in years, which the problem with hydrogen is the very low temperature, minus 280 degrees. You have the compression. So technology is coming to a point where this is going to be out of the way, quite, and you say you don't see, we can say, 2 or 3 years for those technology to actually happen. And you want to intervene?
Yeah, I want to say that I like to dream, always. But we have made a study to apply hydrogen technology on the yacht to keep it at the temperature, a low temperature, and to store, you need to eliminate or the master cabin or the flybridge. You have to decide. And so how many final customer, do you think are ready to pay so much in terms of space, in terms of impossible to fill in and everything? And then on the overall cycle, today to obtain hydrogen is absolutely inefficient. And so you need to burn fuel, gas, or nuclear to have the hydrogen. And so overall, it's a technology that we cannot sustain as a business, because anyway, I think we are talking to people that are involved in a yachting industry in some way. And so to me, what it makes sense is something that it makes sense for the final customer. And today we are far away. This is the reality.
All right, I'll link you up with some people that you might be surprised have much better solutions than what you seem to have been looking at.
The propulsion package is ready.
Yeah, because in terms of volume,
the fuel cell are ready. The problem is the hydrogen.
So that's the problem, is that you're talking old school, old time technology.
How many yachts with hydrogen are available? You know that?
Soon. So just to finish on ambient hydrogen, because I think it's critical to what you just mentioned. Ambient hydrogen means hydrogen is just a liquid-based material like any other. The problem with hydrogen was compression and low temperature, making the cost so high for storage, for transport, and so on.
A little detail for a yacht owner.
Yeah, but this is coming out of the way with ambient hydrogen. And not only that, but the new technologies that are, I would say, again, 3 to 4 years max, depending on the support those companies and those developers will get. Some ambient technology coming out at that point will be actually less in volume than diesel.
I remember.
So in terms of volume, it will be less than diesel.
When I did the first study about hydrogen yacht, 7 years ago, they told me, in a couple of years, we are ready for this technology. And so I take note, 5 years from now.
We turn his mic off. But you can see the challenges, I think. That's just one technology. But in all seriousness, I think it's quite important in working with. We've seen it in the proposal from Amsterdam as a city, where they want to have electric-only zone, basically. And I use that term specifically because people perceive as electric-only as being very sustainable and very green and very environmentally friendly. But using that term does limit certain factors beyond just the obvious one of where you're going to get that electricity from. So it's all very well Amsterdam being electric only around the canals and around certain areas, but where do you plug in everything? Where do you plug in the trucks, the ferries, the boats, the canal boats, the motorbikes, and everything else? But this has highlighted why we need to be careful also with our language. Sustainable is hard to define. Electric only, great, but how about using emission-free or those kind of terminologies, not to limit it to a particular technology type. So in 10 years' time, if hydrogen does become more viable. Yeah.
Can I just add to that I think it's crucial that we, like you said, measure performance, just look at numbers and never fall in love with any one technology. In 2003, I went to Iceland because they had the first hydrogen fueling station and a city bus running on hydrogen, and I fell in love with that technology because of this sort of almost philosophical idea of it being truly circular. And there was actually a documentary saying that most major car manufacturers would have hydrogen cars in the showroom by 2010.
Sure.
2010. But now we have really good batteries that solve the problem today in the best way possible. I think we should never fall in love or discard any one technology. Just look at what is available now, what has the best performance now, and go for that performance. And then when we're not in the business of building aluminium cats, we're in the business of building recyclable cats. If some form of fiber or composite becomes sustainable, then we'll go with that. As long as it's better performing sustainability, we should all fall in love with that.
Great. Yeah.
I would like to add another option, biodiesel. No one has mentioned this possibility, but engines are already in the mood to be used with biodiesel, and as a shipyard we are studying to test biodiesel. In China there are some plants that producing, and also in Italy there is not in trade, but is in another option.
Okay, great. I think there's one more.
Just
there's
a quick
question
one.
at the back.
And I think the magic word has been said, is scaling up the technology and creating the demand. I mean, electric cars were something that was not affordable, not possible. Then Tesla came up, and now everyone wants an electric car. 30 years ago, a GPS was something that only the US Navy could afford. How many GPS do we have on this stage right now? So it's just a matter of looking at things with a certain, not very long-term vision, but sustainable and recyclable fibers, they might be more expensive now, but the second generation will only cost the cost of the energy required to remelt them. So we're looking at something that will definitely impact, and what we need to create the demand right now. I mean, this is why we're here. We need to create this awareness for what is going to be and create the demand so that the infrastructure will come. Hydrogen is the same thing. I mean, hydrogen can be generated on location, and electrolyzer can be there creating the hydrogen on location. It's just a matter of creating the request for it. So it's all a matter of creating that momentum, and I think this is what is all the whole point of this kind of panels is.
Thank you. Have you got one here? Okay.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point, and it actually ties into what Andrea was saying about serial hybrids. a serial hybrid is not efficient because you have too many energy conversions. And generating or creating hydrogen on your boat requires electricity. If you're going to use electricity, why not apply it directly to an electric motor? Why go through all of the cost of converting it into hydrogen? Reduce the number of energy conversions, you have a more efficient boat. I think we have an answer. Yeah.
A maximum. I don't want that. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, and the ratio to like power that needs to be generated for making hydrogen, and the better efficiency that you have when you store and transport energy through hydrogen is, I mean, the ratio is very big. So that means that you're gaining no matter what. But I think we talked, maybe, you know, Patrick, you mentioned looking forward in a year's time. If I could mention just a couple things on that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple themes that are sprouting out in the industry today, and that we kind of have to take a look at. I think one thing is carbon offsets and compensation. I think there's a big push to say this is an easy fix solution. I would make everybody careful on any of that. Because compensation now more and more clearly has been looked at a lesser good solution. So I think we really have to, for people who don't know about offsets and compensation, it's linked to carbon credits. So you buy your way, you give some money to a company that will eventually give money to more or less environmentally friendly projects. So you can pollute and say, I'm carbon neutral because I gave the same amount of money to balance my pollution. I'm saying all that quickly. So I'm just saying we should change our ways, our emissions, our raw material, our behaviors much more than trying to go into the easy fix, which is really not one. That's just one thing. I'll go to two things. There's the exploring aspect of things. I think more and more the maritime sector is looking at exploration. If you look at yachting, if you look at cruising, there's a lot of things going on in polar regions, which is obviously, as somebody who cares about the environment, is not a very great stuff. But what I refer to is, I think, and Barbara, you could talk about this a little bit. There's a lot of things that needs to be done in terms of information providing to crews and to owners on navigation, on marine protected areas, on how to behave really when you're exploring, when you're going to remote places, because most of the time when you're going to remote places, those are places where the fauna and flora really thrive because we're not around. So I'd say we really need to up our game on navigation systems that provide that information, and just on information overall. And the third thing I think is on sustainable refit. I'd be happy to learn about more solutions that are coming, and Barbara is very right. I think most of the vessels are not very well made to be changed into more sustainable vessels a lot of the time. You look at engine rooms and you look at, I mean, the list goes on. But I'll be very interested to obviously there's new build solutions that are out there, but more refit, more sustainable refit solution. And obviously linked to the question the lady mentioned earlier. I think there's a lot of things to be discussed and will be discussed tomorrow on recyclability.
Recycling, yeah. No, thanks very much. That's interesting how you raise that responsibility as a manufacturer of a product, not just handing it over to the user and expecting the best, is actually creating some kind of guidance for that.
Hi, I have a question regarding the discharge of human waste from boats. In most coastal Mediterranean countries, the limit that is forbidden to discharge that waste is about 12 miles. I've been working in the boat business for over 20 years in Mallorca, and I've met hundreds of boat owners in that time, motorboat owners, and not one have I met who's admitted to me he went 12 miles offshore to empty his holding tank. So my question is really to Andre from Sunseeker. I've been on many Sunseeker boats where the option to discharge waste from the toilet is given a choice. You can choose to go direct to sea, or you can choose to go direct to holding tank. How about you design the boat where you take away that choice, and the only choice the owner has is to have it pumped out into the sewerage system so it never goes into the sea?
Well, I'm lucky I can partially answer that because of the glamorous title of actually being an ISO convener for wastewater treatment system standard. So it's law. No, I know, but in Europe, it's absolutely against the law to pump directly out even 12 miles. The boat itself is constructed to set principles, but you're 100% right. How do we stop the gray area, excuse the pun, of wastewater inadvertently going overboard or anything else like that?
No, but the answer is very easy. I mean, the boat, I think, at least in the last 10 years, built it that all the waste goes into the holding tank.
Is there another event?
But of course, it's written that you cannot discharge the holding tank until you are out, and so you have an owner's manual in a label, everything. But if the people discharge in a marina, I mean, it's a choice. Anyway, it's not that the boats are not anymore built that discharge directly, even the smaller and the bigger. Okay, but sometimes you have the chance to discharge. I mean, we cannot avoid. I mean, okay, everything is possible, but tell me how. I mean, when the boat is moored, we have a system that lock completely everything. Okay, it's something. But you know, I think that anyway, like at your home, you waste. There are people that recycle correctly the things, and there are people that, even though all the organization provided to you the possibility to do, they don't do it. And so this is the limit. The boats are built in a way in which you have all the possibility to operate, because the tank is big and you have not that problem, and you have also the discharge line from the deck, and so whatever.
I think, Barbara, we are running out of time, so I don't think we can take too many questions.
To try to solve this problem, I have created a system called wastewater facility to teach people on board how to use. So there are instructions to go out when the tanks are full, and to avoid to discharge when you are in the harbor, and give you the right position, the GPS position when you go out to discharge, so you can show that you have done in a correct way. But we have to teach people to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because often when you have a marina, you have also a beach not far. So for that people that stay at the beach, is not correct to use in the marina.
Yeah, I'm afraid we are running a bit out of time. There is a speaker lounge, so most of our panelists are going to be in the speaker lounge afterwards if you'd like to ask more questions. But I think you can see from the topics we've been discussing, I hope everyone found something that they could take away. It's a big item, sustainability, and it affects all these different kind of sectors within our industry. But thank you to all the panelists. Thank you very much. Cool.